Ladies and gentlemen, there are no limits. Precious one, no limits in the heart of a person who dares to believe. No chains strong enough to hold down a soul set on fire with purpose. You may have been told, you're too old. You're too young. You've made too many mistakes. You've missed your moment. But I am here to tell you today, you have not missed one thing heaven has written for you. Not one dream, one promise, not one divine appointment. Pause. Shift to intense sincerity. There are people listening to me right now. You're living behind invisible walls. Walls you didn't build, but walls you've started to believe in. Faith is louder than fear. This simple truth has the power to completely reframe the way you see your life, struggles, and your future. Fear is a familiar voice. It whispers doubts, inflates problems, and paralyzes potential. It shows up dressed as logic, disguised as caution, pretending to protect you while quietly stealing your courage. It speaks in what ifs and you can'ts, convincing you to settle for safety when your soul was designed for expansion. And yet over that noise there is another voice, a stronger voice, a deeper truth. Faith. Faith does not shout to be heard. It doesn't always arrive in thunder or lightning. Sometimes it comes in a whisper that refuses to be silenced. Faith is the quiet resolve that says, even if I can't see the way forward, I will still move. Faith isn't always the absence of fear, but the decision to keep going even when fear is present. It is choosing trust over terror, choosing hope over hesitation, choosing movement over paralysis. Faith is not blind. It sees beyond what fear can comprehend. Fear looks at statistics, circumstances, and history. Faith looks at destiny, possibility, and purpose. Fear says, stay where you are. It's too risky. Faith says, step out, because you weren't made to stay hidden. Fear analyzes every worst-case scenario. Faith imagines the best-case reality. Faith gives you eyes to see beyond the limits fear tries to enforce. There are moments in every journey where the fork in the road becomes clear and you can listen to fear, or you can follow faith. Fear demands that you prove the outcome before you take the first step. But faith invites you to take the step first, and watch the outcome unfold. Fear says you must have control. Faith says surrender is where true strength begins. In the silence of your heart, you can feel which voice leads you to life. Fear is heavy, it tightens your chest and clouds your thoughts. Faith, even when it feels risky, brings clarity, energy, and movement. Faith does not eliminate difficulty, it transforms how you walk through it. With faith, you don't crumble under pressure, you rise through it. With faith, you don't just survive, you build, you believe, and you birth the impossible. Think of the times you hesitated, not because the path wasn't right, but because fear held your voice, your hands, your heart hostage. Think of the dreams that stayed in your mind, never reaching your hands, because fear whispered, what if you fail? And now, think of what could happen when you choose to believe anyway. Faith doesn't need everything to be perfect to begin. It needs only your agreement. That sacred yes. Faith is not for the perfect. It's not reserved for the strong. It is the fuel of those who dare to dream with trembling knees. It's the anthem of those who walk through storms with a song still in their chest. Faith builds bridges where fear insists there are only gaps. It opens doors that fear never even saw. Faith causes you to act when everything in the natural says wait. Faith causes you to speak when fear demands your silence. Faith is louder, not always in volume, but in authority. Fear may make noise, but faith carries weight. You are not created for small dreams. That knowing lives deep inside you, whether it has been silenced or stirred, denied or developed. From the beginning, something in you has whispered that you were made for more. Not more in the sense of accumulation or applause, but more in the sense of depth, impact, purpose, and the kind of fulfillment that makes your chest rise when you wake up in the morning. Small dreams cannot contain the fire placed in your soul. They are too fragile, too limited, too predictable. You were never meant to shrink yourself to fit the mold of mediocrity. You were meant to disrupt it. There is a greatness coded into your being, not the kind that demands attention or requires a stage, but the kind that transforms lives quietly, steadily, powerfully. The kind of greatness that causes someone to stand when they used to sit in silence. The kind that breaks cycles, raises standards, and births visions others were afraid to touch. Small dreams cannot carry the weight of that kind of greatness. They crack under it. They fade under it. They collapse. You were made for dreams that stretch you, scare you, and summon you higher. Small dreams don't require courage. They require compliance. They ask you to stay where it's safe, where it's known, where no one questions you and nothing challenges you. But dreams that are worthy of you will demand that you change, that you grow, that you let go of who you were to become who you were always meant to be. They will cost you comfort, but they will disturb your routine. But they will also awaken parts of you that have been asleep far too long. You were not born to repeat the past or imitate the present. You were born to shape the future. That requires vision. That requires conviction. That requires a willingness to believe in something bigger than your surroundings. The world around you may offer you templates, predictable paths, safe routes, familiar formulas, but you are not a copy of anything. You are an original expression of divine creativity, and small dreams will always feel suffocating to someone wired for originality. There will be moments when you're tempted to settle, when the weight of resistance makes small dreams look easier, when you watch others find quick success by staying within the lines, but your peace will never come from comfort. It will come from alignment with your values, your calling, your soul's true design. Small dreams might offer temporary applause, but big dreams give you legacy. They give you transformation. They leave a mark long after you're gone. You were not created to dim your light to make others feel safe. You were created to burn so brightly that others remember their own fire. You are not a placeholder in this life. You are not a filler or a background character. You are here on assignment, and that assignment is too big for small dreams. It requires your full self, your full heart, your full commitment. It will ask you to walk roads no one has walked, to say yes when others say no, to believe when everything seems uncertain. But it will also reward you with a life that is real, rich, and deeply alive. The dreams planted in you are not accidents. They are not illusions. They are instructions. And if they feel too big for you, that's because they're supposed to stretch you. That's how you know they are real. That's how you know they were never meant to fit into the shallow expectations of a small life. Every setback is a setup for purpose. It may not feel like it in the moment. When life collapses around you, when doors slam shut, when the things you thought were secure unravel right before your eyes, it's hard to believe that anything good could come from it. But there is a higher order, a hidden orchestration, a divine intelligence that takes even the most painful moments and weaves them into something meaningful. The things you thought disqualified you are often the very things that prepared you. A setback is not the end. It is a redirection, a course correction, a sacred pause designed to align you with something better, something deeper, something that can hold the weight of who you're becoming. You don't always see it at first, because setbacks come dressed in disappointment. They look like rejection, failure, betrayal, or delay. They feel like loss. But in reality, they are often the first clues that your story is about to shift. You may look back on seasons where everything fell apart, and in hindsight realize those were the moments you were being set free from what no longer served you. The relationship that ended, the job that disappeared, the plan that failed, none of those were wasted. They were part of the shaping. They were part of the process. They were preparing you for something your comfort zone never could. When you are too close to something, it's hard to see clearly. But when life pulls you back, it is not punishment, it's preparation. Purpose is not born on the mountaintop. It's forged in the valley. It's refined in the fire. It's developed in the dark, when no one sees your struggle, when you question everything, when you learn to breathe again after being broken. Those moments teach you strength you didn't know you had. They teach you resilience. They give you a voice with weight, with authority, with empathy. Because people don't listen to someone who has never been through anything. They listen to someone who has lived through the loss, faced the fear, stood in the ashes, and still chose to rise. Setbacks strip away what is false. They remove illusions. They force you to confront what's real. Sometimes you don't know what you're made of until everything else is taken away. That's when your true essence shows up. That's when the core of you begins to speak. And that core knows something the surface does not, that purpose was never in the position, the title, or the relationship, or the recognition. Purpose lives in your why, in your essence, in the core that won't let you quit. Even the things you regret, those moments you wish you could erase, can be repurposed. Nothing is wasted. Every misstep can be used. Every detour can become a story. Every delay can make you deeper, wiser, and more aligned. Purpose is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about the willingness to walk forward with scars and stories, knowing that the pain was not the end. It was the beginning of becoming. You don't have to understand it all to trust the process. You don't have to see the whole map to take the next step. Purpose is often revealed one layer at a time, one broken place at a time. And what once looked like failure when seen from a higher view becomes the very thing that unlocked your path. There is a rhythm to it all, even in the chaos. There is a grace working behind the scenes, repurposing what was meant to destroy you and turning it into something that develops you. The real barriers are in the mind, not in the economy, not in your background, not in what they said about you or the doors they didn't open. The mind is the first battlefield, the first gatekeeper, the first mountain. What you believe about yourself, what you rehearse in your thoughts, what you accept as possible or impossible. These are the forces that either keep you confined or set you free. Most of the limits that shape your life were not built by your circumstances. They were built by your thoughts. You can be in an open field and still feel trapped if your mind tells you there's no way out. You can have the resources, the time, the support, and still hesitate if your thoughts are conditioned by fear or shame. The mind can be a prison or a pathway. It can hold on to stories that were never yours to carry. Old narratives, inherited doubts, past failures that keep replaying like a broken record, telling you what you're not, what you'll never be, what you've already missed. But those thoughts are not facts. They are filters. They are walls made of words that were accepted without being questioned. The human mind is powerful. It builds what it believes. If it believes you're unworthy, it will sabotage every opportunity that suggests otherwise. If it believes you're not capable, it will interpret every challenge as confirmation. But when the mind begins to shift, when a single belief is uprooted and replaced with truth, the landscape of your entire life begins to change. It doesn't take a perfect person to build a powerful life. It takes a renewed mind. You can have all the strategy in the world, but if your mindset is small, you'll shrink every dream to match your comfort. You'll unconsciously avoid risk, stay in cycles, and rationalize your way out of change. It won't matter how much you want the life you dream of if your mind is trained to distrust the very thing you're reaching for. And yet, once you recognize that the true barriers aren't outside but within, you gain back your power. Because you can't always control what happens around you, but you can learn to govern what happens within you. This is why breakthrough doesn't start with a promotion, a connection, or a miracle. It starts with a thought. It starts with noticing the script that plays on repeat. It starts with asking, who told me that? Why do I believe that? What would my life look like if I no longer accepted that as truth? Change begins in those moments of awareness, in those quiet, private shifts where you decide that the old way of thinking no longer fits the future you're building. The mind holds memories, but it also holds imagination. It can rehearse the past or envision the future. The question is, which will you give power to? Will you continue to run loops of limitation, or will you write new patterns of possibility? When you take control of your thoughts, you take control of your direction. And when you align your thoughts with your values, your truth, your calling, barriers begin to break. Not always overnight, not always without resistance, but they break. The greatest transformations don't begin with new information. They begin with new mindsets, with the belief that healing is possible, that growth is allowed, that freedom is real. Once the mind believes, the body follows. The actions align, the habits shift. The life begins to reflect what the heart has always known. You were never meant to live in mental cages. You were born with the ability to renew, to release, to rise. Your destiny doesn't need permission. It doesn't wait for approval, consensus, or applause. It doesn't check your qualifications or your past. Destiny is not something others give you. It is something already written into your being. From the moment you took your first breath, something eternal was breathed into you. A call, a purpose, a direction that doesn't depend on who believes in you or who doesn't. You don't need a panel of voices to validate what was planted in you before anyone knew your name. Too often, people wait for signs that never come. They wait for someone to say they're ready, they're worthy, they're enough. But no one else can see the blueprint of your life the way you do. Others can guess, observe, even doubt. But they weren't there when the fire was lit inside of you. They didn't feel that quiet stirring that wouldn't go away. They didn't hear the whisper in the night that said, "There's more for you." That whisper is the voice of destiny, and it does not beg to be believed. It waits patiently for you to stop asking others for what's already yours. Destiny is not fragile. It doesn't break when people misunderstand you. It doesn't evaporate when you make mistakes. It doesn't disappear because the door was shut. What is yours by design cannot be stolen by opinion. The only way destiny is delayed is if you stop believing in it. Not if others stop, if you stop. You are the gatekeeper of your own purpose. You decide whether to lean into it, to cultivate it, to follow its pull even when the road is dark and uncertain. The greatest barriers to destiny are not external. They are internal voices that say, "Who do you think you are?" They come from comparison, rejection, fear of being too much or not enough. But destiny doesn't care how long it takes. It only waits for you to rise. Not rise in ego, but in truth, rise in clarity. Rise in obedience to that deeper call that refuses to let you go. You are not waiting for the world to say yes. You are waiting for you to say yes. You don't need a title to walk in purpose. You don't need a platform to live with impact. Destiny is not a destination, it's a decision. It's not something far off. It's something you live now, in every choice, every act of courage, every moment you refuse to go back to who you were just to make someone else comfortable. Some people will misunderstand your shift. Some will resist it. That's part of the process. Because when you begin to live with purpose, you become a mirror. And mirrors make people uncomfortable when they are not ready to look. But that is not your burden to carry. Your only responsibility is to honor what you know to be true, to walk in what is calling you forward, to stop minimizing your light just to stay palatable. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to fulfill a mission, and missions are rarely explained. They are lived. They are carried out in silence, in sacrifice, in moments of radical faith. The moment you stop waiting for the world to give you permission, you become unstoppable. The moment you realize your destiny is between you and the divine, between you and the truth inside of you, everything changes. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, decide differently. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you're finally aligned. You're no longer waiting at doors that were never meant to open. You're building the life that was always meant to be lived through you. Rejection is redirection. It may come wrapped in disappointment, in silence, in doors that refuse to open no matter how hard you knock. It may sting, confuse, even break your heart. But rejection is not the enemy. It is often the most honest guide you'll ever meet. It tells you what is not for you, what cannot hold you, what was never meant to be your resting place. What feels like loss is often protection in disguise. What feels like being pushed out is really you being pulled into something greater. You don't always see it right away. At first, rejection feels personal. It feels like you weren't enough, like you missed the moment, like something in you disqualified you. But those are the lies rejection tries to use to cloud the truth. And the truth is, some things must fall away to make room for what is meant to rise. Rejection strips away illusions. It removes the options that would have kept you small, hidden, or out of alignment. It forces a shift. It demands that you move. Sometimes rejection comes from people. A closed relationship, a missed opportunity, a friend who walked away. Sometimes it comes from circumstances. A failed attempt, an application denied, a dream that didn't unfold how you imagined. And in those moments, it's easy to ask, why not me? But often, the better question is, what am I being prepared for? Rejection is not the absence of purpose. It is a necessary clearing. A redirection toward where your purpose can actually thrive. There is nothing wasted in the redirection. Every detour holds a lesson. Every "no" that hurt you also freed you. Every delay made space for strength to grow in secret. Rejection taught you resilience. It built muscles you didn't know you had. It deepened your discernment. It reminded you not to place your worth in outcomes or others' opinions. It taught you how to listen to the still, small voice that guides you forward even when the path looks unclear. Sometimes you have to be rejected from what is good so you can be positioned for what is divine. The door that closed may have led to comfort, but not to your calling. The space you were pushed out of may have been familiar, but it could not hold the expansion that was coming. You outgrew the rooms that no longer reflected your vision. And though rejection may have felt like a loss, it was actually a release, so you could step into a greater alignment with your purpose. Redirection is not a punishment. It's a sacred reroute. It's life telling you, there's something better, keep moving. Sometimes what you think is your destination is just a rest stop. Sometimes the rejection is the catalyst for reinvention. It wakes you up. It asks you to look again, to listen again, to dream again. But this time with clarity and conviction. This time without needing to fit into someone else's mold. You are not defined by who said no. You are not diminished by the doors that didn't open. What is meant for you will not miss you. But sometimes you must be removed from what is wrong before you can fully recognize what is right. The vision will come into focus only when you stop looking back at what wouldn't hold you. There is a rhythm to redirection, a wisdom to the way life moves, reshapes, and reforms you. It may not be painless, but it is purposeful. Every rejection has a message. Every redirection has a map. The question is whether you will trust the shift, whether you will choose to keep walking, whether you will finally see that nothing is being taken from you, only making room for what is about to come through you. Fear loses its power when you move forward anyway. It doesn't vanish, it doesn't dissolve in a flash of courage, and it doesn't politely step aside. Fear stays close, especially when you are on the verge of something new, something sacred, something that matters. It whispers worst-case scenarios, reminds you of past failures, magnifies your doubts, and dares you to retreat. But fear is not a sign you're on the wrong path. It's a signal that you're touching something real, something worth pursuing, something that stretches you beyond who you used to be. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing it while fear rides in the passenger seat. It's feeling your heart race and your hands shake and taking the step anyway. It's standing in the unknown without all the answers and choosing to move. Fear loses its grip when you stop waiting for it to go away. You don't need fear to disappear in order to rise. You need to stop letting it lead. You need to stop feeding it with your focus, because fear grows where attention flows, and the more you stare at it, the more power it holds. There is no growth without discomfort. There is no breakthrough without resistance. And fear, more often than not, is just a byproduct of growth. It shows up when you step outside the familiar, when you dare to ask for more, when you begin to live according to purpose instead of survival. That's when fear turns up the volume. But even then, it is powerless if you don't obey it. You don't have to silence fear to walk in power. You just have to stop letting it make your decisions. Every great story you admire began with someone who felt afraid and moved anyway. The heroes, the pioneers, the changemakers, they weren't fearless. They were willing to look foolish, willing to fail, willing to be seen trying. That willingness is what breaks fear's illusion, because fear thrives in delay. It feeds on your hesitation. But action dismantles fear's authority. One step, one decision, one moment of movement, that's all it takes to begin shifting the balance. Fear loves to pose as wisdom. It dresses itself in caution, logic, and reason. It sounds responsible. It sounds protective. But fear's job is not to guide you, is to guard you from change. And while that might sound safe, it's also the reason people stay stuck for years. Fear convinces them that comfort is the goal, that predictability is peace. But deep inside, something knows the truth. Staying small may feel safe, but it costs you your soul. There are things you'll only learn when you walk through fear. You'll discover strength that can't be studied, confidence that can't be rehearsed, power that only shows up in motion. You'll learn that the fear of failing is never as bad as the pain of not trying. You'll come to understand that most of the things you were afraid of were shadows, not substance. And you'll begin to trust that what's inside you is greater than anything that stands against you. Fear will still whisper. It may never go fully silent, but it no longer gets to drive. It no longer gets to dictate your pace, your posture, your decisions. Every time you move forward while afraid, you train your spirit to lead. You teach your mind to trust. You build a new narrative, one where fear is not the villain, but the backdrop to your courage. Because bravery is not loud, it's not reckless. It's choosing to keep walking when everything in you wants to run. It's refusing to be ruled by what-ifs and worst-case stories. It's anchoring yourself to purpose more than to comfort. It's waking up and deciding again and again that fear may come along for the ride, but it will never determine your destination. Love is the most powerful force for transformation. Not the kind of love that simply makes you feel good, but the kind that calls you higher, that holds a mirror to your soul, that asks you to rise. Love is not weak. It is not passive. It is the fire that burns away shame, the light that exposes lies, the strength that makes healing possible. Without love, all the striving in the world will still leave you empty. But when love is present, real love, rooted love, unconditional love, everything begins to shift from the inside out. You can have all the tools, strategies, and knowledge in the world, but if you do not operate from love, it all becomes noise. Love is the foundation that gives meaning to every effort. It's what fuels purpose and sustains vision. It's what keeps you going when the work is hard, when the breakthrough is delayed, when the people around you don't understand what you're building. Love is what makes the impossible bearable and the unbearable worth it. It is what turns endurance into transformation. You cannot truly grow without love, because love is what holds you steady as you confront the things you've been afraid to face. It's what tells you that you're more than your mistakes, more than your failures, more than the pain you carry. Love does not excuse the broken places, but it enters them. It does not pretend the wounds aren't there, but it sits with them until they begin to heal. Love brings truth with gentleness, conviction with compassion. It sees through the mask and reaches the core. Real love does not coddle you, but it doesn't condemn you either. It speaks in a voice that says, "You are worthy even here." And that voice, when believed, becomes the most liberating sound in the world. Because once you know you are loved at your lowest, you stop living to prove yourself. You stop striving for validation. You stop settling for things that numb your pain but never resolve it. Love gives you the courage to change because it tells you that you are already enough to begin. Love is not just something you give or receive, it is something you become. When you are filled with love, you begin to live differently. You move with empathy, you listen with presence, you forgive with ease. You don't compete from scarcity or perform from insecurity, you operate from fullness. And that fullness affects everything, your relationships, your decisions, your ability to handle failure and success. Love makes space for grace. It sees the long game. It holds the vision even when the current moment doesn't look like progress. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and love is what fills it. Not just the love others give you, but the love you cultivate within. When you begin to treat yourself with kindness, speak to yourself with respect, and honor your own journey, you create the inner environment where transformation can happen. You stop waiting for someone else to rescue you, and you begin to walk in your own worth. You stop measuring yourself by other people's timelines and start trusting your own process. That is the power of love. It restores your authority over your own life. It's not always loud. It's not always romantic. Sometimes love looks like rest. Sometimes it looks like setting boundaries. Sometimes it looks like letting go. Sometimes it looks like starting over. But in every form, love is a choice. A choice to see value where others see failure. A choice to extend compassion when it would be easier to withdraw. A choice to believe that the person you are becoming is worth the work. When love leads, fear loses ground. When love leads, shame has no place. When love leads, even the most broken things can be made whole again. When you strip away the noise, the doubts, the limits others tried to place on you, what remains is truth. The truth that you were never meant to live small. You were created with purpose, fire, and divine intention. The barriers you faced were never bigger than the power inside of you. The rejection, the fear, the delays, the closed doors, they were never signs of your unworthiness, but invitations to rise higher, to see clearer, to trust deeper. This life, the one you long for, the one that keeps calling to you in quiet moments, is not a fantasy. It's your destiny waiting to be claimed. But it won't come by waiting for permission. It won't come by shrinking to fit into someone else's mold. It will come when you say yes, fully, finally, fearfully brave and beautifully ready. There are no limits except the ones you choose to keep. So tear down the walls, walk through the fear, hold on to the vision, and build the life that only you can build. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now, because you were made for this.